Welcome back. You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. Of course, our top story, one of our top stories this morning is the Vice President's visit to the Niger Delta, beginning a series of meetings with stakeholders. And he kicks off that meeting in Delta State. Of course, Wale Olusi, an investment analyst with AfroInvest, gave us a curtain raiser about how this will most likely impact investors' views on some of the stocks in the upstream sector, particularly Seplat and Owando. But we'll get to that story in just a bit. Dolapo Oni, who is the head of energy research at EcoBank, will be joining us, of course, to give us some industry stakeholders' perspectives on this particular visit. But let's take a look at how some of the oil and gas stocks will track on the program, including Seplat and Owando, fared at the end of trade on Friday. Corn oil and Forte oil were among, and as well as Owando, were among the top gainers for Friday's trade. Corn oil notching up 2.33% to finish at 37 naira 35 kobo, and Forte oil was up marginally 0.01% to 74 naira. But take a look at the next page. Owando gained about 21 basis points. Investors have been trading mixed on this particular equity, and on Friday it finished at 4 naira 71 kobo with a volume of 4,604,613 recorded. But Total and Seplat down 1.32 and 2.63% respectively, closing at 370. That's for Seplat, and 300 naira for Total. At the end of the week, the weekly index return came in at 3.15%, and the year-to-date is at minus 4.74%, with dividend yield at 2.0%. So, Nigeria's Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, begins a series of meetings with stakeholders in the Niger Delta. He kicks off the meeting in Delta State today with a series of interactive engagements with oil-producing communities as part of the federal government's renewed efforts to resolve crisis in that region. Now, according to a statement from the Vice President's office, Professor Osinbajo will lead high-level delegations of the federal government that will interact with leaders and representatives of these communities. At a later date to be announced, the Vice President will also be visiting, is also expected to visit Bayelsa and Rivers State. Now, these visits are part of resolutions that were reached last year, where issues in the Niger Delta were part of the 7 Big Wins roadmap for the nation's oil and gas sector launched by the President. Now, the President promised to interact and engage more with the Niger Delta stakeholders and try to resolve their issues. Now, at the first meeting with the President, the Niger Delta stakeholders, led by Chief Edwin Clark and Chief Alfred Dietes Spiff, presented 16 points. Now, these 16 points focused on, these are the number of issues: the presidential amnesty program, which they say they want that program to be reviewed and reappraised so that its core mandate to provide a robust exit strategy is achieved. They also want law and justice in that region, where there are a number of pending law and justice issues regarding some aggrieved groups and individuals that are yet to be resolved. The effect of increased military presence in the Niger Delta, they want that reduced because that also constitutes harassment and other forms of human rights abuses. They want that to be halted to reduce escalating tension, as well as taking a look at the plight of internally displaced persons, the Ogoni cleanup and environmental remediation. That has already started. The work is already ongoing, with the Ministry of Environment leading that particular charge. We also have the demand to establish a maritime university, key regional critical infrastructure, as well as improved power supply. So that's just a summary of some of the 16-point demand of the Niger Delta stakeholders. So as the Vice President begins his meeting with the stakeholders today, are there any low-hanging fruits that can be executed to keep militants off the pipelines and ensure peace at last in the Niger Delta? Joining the conversation is Dolapo Oni, Head of Energy Research at EcoBank. Dolapo, good morning. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning, Harriet. Thanks for having me.
So, for you, what do you think the Vice President will be putting on the table?
I mean, there are a lot of things they could put on the table. One of the fundamental things that I think this visit also tries to do is to show that the federal government is ready to engage with the Niger Delta, especially when you think about the fact that there's been a lot of demands that why aren't they engaging, why aren't they engaging? So this is a key step in showing that, look, we're ready to engage, we're visiting the region, we're ready to talk to the various stakeholders. But more importantly, I think what the vice president can put on the table is a listening ear, first of all. So what exactly do you want? We've seen 16 demands. A lot of them are not very specific. What exactly is missing? So we can talk to the various stakeholders, because again, this also is an opportunity to recognize the fact that it's not just an Ijaw struggle. There are several groups now. There are Ijaw, there's the Shekiri, there are parts of Bayelsa as well. There are so many other groups that have their own grievances. So all those have to be met and deliberated with.
Okay, so Jolapo, 16 points demand, and they're quite specific about the amnesty program. They want to ensure that there's law and justice. They want the internally displaced persons in the Niger Delta to be relocated and even not put back in their home habitat, at least somewhere comfortable. They also want security surveillance and protection of oil and gas infrastructure to come to the community. So they're a little bit more specific. But taking a look at this 16-point demand, how do you think the government should go about meeting some of these demands, or maybe all of them?
Well, I mean, clearly, one thing I think we can say is not all the 16 demands can be met immediately or within a very short time frame. More importantly, again, there's still the question of, can we really meet all 16 demands? I mean, there are a few things like asking the IOCs to relocate to the Niger Delta, which is not physically possible. To some extent, it's clear because you can see that there's even a lack of infrastructure that is required that even the communities are asking for. So asking the IOCs to come and also stay there would make it really difficult. So there are some of the demands that are readily stuff that we can start working on. For instance, the demand about reviewing the amnesty program. I think that's a very key first step. The amnesty program, I've said